Hello, astronomy enthusiasts from all around the world. My name is Luis Miguel Azorin, and I welcome you to a new video from Astro Academy, your YouTube channel, your podcast, and your online academy. All about what we are passionate about: astronomy, astrophotography, and everything related to the universe and space. About a year and a half ago, I already talked to you on this channel about how to calculate the offset or compensation for our astrophotography camera to avoid saturating the pixels on the black level side. That step allowed us to protect the weakest information, the darkest information, and to ensure that our darks and deep skylights didn't have any zero-value pixels without information. If you haven't seen this video, I'll leave it here for you. Today we're going one step further. Now we can objectively and quantitatively assess how many pixels are saturated, either on the white side, blown out, or on the black side, crushed, in our images. This way, we can finally adjust the offset, gain, and exposure time parameters in our astrophotography sessions. And not only that, the truly important thing is that we can apply this evaluation both to individual images and to stacked images, that is, to the final product we'll be working with during processing. This allows us to detect problems that will actually affect the final result, not just a single independent image. Just to be clear, in astrophotography, the final image we work on is the stacked one, because that's where we've reduced and enhanced the signal. If any pixel is blown out or clipped in the stack, it means that information is lost forever, and there's no going back during processing. This can happen for several reasons. For example, an offset that's too low. Some pixels reach zero, and the information from the faintest signal disappears. Or a gain that's too high. The brightest pixels reach the maximum value, becoming blown out and losing information. Or an inadequate exposure. It combines effects from both, saturating the bright areas if the exposure is too long or crushing the dark areas if the exposure is too short. That's why it's important to evaluate the percentage of clipped or saturated pixels in the stacked image. It's much more representative of the quality of our data than looking at a single individual capture. And this is where a PixInsight script comes in that I didn't know about. But my friend Angel from Diario Astronomo recommended it to me, and it's going to make this job much easier for us. By the way, go ahead and subscribe to the Diario Astronomo channel, because the content Angel shares is really worth it. This script is Clipping Detector for PixInsight. It's a script created by a Spaniard, Miguel Gutierrez, and it's actually quite hard to find online these days. That's why we're providing a direct download link for it through the Astro Academy website. This script allows us to detect pixels that have reached the maximum or minimum value in our image, and to quantify the number and percentage of them so we can know if the saturation or loss of information is significant. It also allows us to create pixel saturation maps over our images to pinpoint exactly where those saturated pixels are. In other words, we don't just see that there's a blown pixel, but also what proportion of the image is affected. And we can make decisions about offset, gain, and exposure based on data. This makes the calibration step much more precise and scientific, and it keeps us from having to rely solely on experience or intuition. So, with that explanation done, all that's left is to move to the computer and show you how to use this script with your images. Alright, here we are in PixInsight, and we're going to see how this Clipping Detector script works. The first thing we need to do is open an image, because as you'll see next, we won't be able to install this script in PixInsight like we do with other scripts. It works a little differently. I'm going to open an image. Let's open this image we have here of Comet 24P Chaumasé. Here we have the stacked image open. These here are the rejection images. Let's close them and apply it. Screen transfer function to the stack. And here we have the image. As you can see, it's a star field with some galaxies. And this streak we have here in the middle is the movement of the comet throughout the entire sequence of images. Once we have the image open, we need to load the script. And as I mentioned, this script works differently from the other scripts you probably use in PixInsight, because we will have to open it every time we want to use it. How do we do that? We go to Script, then to Execute Script File, and we simply have to look for where we have it saved. I have it here on this hard drive, and here we have Clipping Detector. I click on it, open, and here we have it open. Here we have all the information about the script, although as you'll see, it's very easy to use. Let's bring it over. On this side, the target image is this one we have open here. If we had more than one image open, we could choose which image we want to apply it to. And as you can see, this is set up to detect pixels that are 100% saturated at 0.9999%. And the crushed pixels, which are absolute blacks, at 0%. Also, from here we can keep these checkboxes activated. This here is so that it detects pixels saturated in black, which is good to have enabled, and so it also generates a map of saturated pixels for us. This is very useful if it detects saturated pixels in the image, so we can see exactly where they are. Let's leave all of this enabled and run the script, and that's it. As you can see, the process is very simple. Here we have the information we were looking for. Notice that it's telling us we have pixels saturated in white. In the R channel we have 0, in the G channel we have 0, and in the B channel we have only 1. Basically, this tells us that we have 0% of pixels saturated in white. However, take a look at what we have here in black saturated pixels. We have 2,905 saturated pixels in each of the colors. And while it's true that this is only 0.00373%, meaning it's a very small percentage of the image, those saturated pixels are still there. They are crushed black pixels at 0%, meaning they contain no information. Let's see which pixels these are. We can remove this, and here we have the maps of white saturated pixels. As we've seen, it was only one pixel in the blue channel. We're not going to detect this. It's impossible to detect a single pixel across the whole image. Besides, we have 0% saturated pixels, so I can just remove the white map. And where do we have those 2,905 pixels saturated in black? Well, I've already done my homework beforehand, and I know where those pixels are located. Those pixels are found in this dark band we have on this side of the image. Notice that if we go to the left side, there's a darker band there. And at the top, due to a framing variation during stacking. And we're going to see that perfectly here on this map. Sometimes those pixels don't show up right away and we have to work a little bit. The map. What we can do is stretch it to see if those saturated pixels appear, and if not, we can invert the image with Control and or Command, and on Mac. And we can apply a virtual stretch to it. If we now invert it again, in principle, we should have them. There they are. Notice that those saturated pixels are located right on that side, over there in the image. Right on the left side, where that stacking error occurred due to a change in framing. So this tool allows us to see in a very quick and visual way which pixels are affected, and decide if those pixels affect us in any way in the final result. In this case, it wouldn't affect the result at all. Let's see how this script works again with another example. Here we have another open image to which I'm going to apply a virtual stretch. This is a stack in hydrogen alpha and oxygen 3 of the California Nebula made with a dual narrowband filter and a color camera. And we're going to apply the same procedure. We go to Script, Execute Script, File, and select the Clipping Detector script. We leave it configured exactly the same, so it detects both the saturated white pixels and the black ones and generates the maps for us. We click OK and look at what we have in this case. Even though we've extracted the saturated pixel maps, it won't even be necessary to review them, because notice that we have saturated white pixels 0.000% and saturated black pixels 0.000% and saturated white pixels 0.000%. This means that in my specific case, I have the camera's gain and offset perfectly configured in Nina. And the exposures I'm using are perfect for preserving all the information and the entire dynamic range that my equipment can capture. As you've seen, this process allows us to go one step further when it comes to optimizing the parameters of our astrophotography equipment, in order to achieve the best possible results during our astrophotography sessions. Remember that you can directly download the Clipping Detector script through the online school at astroacademy.es. I hope the information in this video has been useful to you, and I'll see you again in the next Astro Academy video.